everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share and bring up the Gantt chart for today. Right. Okay, is Josh on? I know he had a lot of conflicts today, so he might not be here.
I'm Phyllis Jackson. Thanks for joining us for Stay at Home Connect.
If you were out protesting last night, you probably need to go get a COVID test this week. Because there's still a pandemic in America that's killing Black and brown people at higher numbers.
Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms sharing concerns about the potential for new COVID-19 cases. She echoes the voices of medical professionals who are also worried about an increase in coronavirus due to protests. Demonstrations were sparked by the death of George Floyd, who was killed while under police custody in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Doctors are strongly encouraging protesters to wear face masks to protect themselves and those with whom they will come in contact, as large assemblies like demonstrations make social distancing difficult, if not impossible. A small Northwestern University study finds that COVID-19 may attack the placentas of pregnant women. 16 women were studied. One suffered a miscarriage. The remaining 15 delivered healthy babies, but 12 were diagnosed with malperfusion, a condition that limits blood flow between the mother and fetus. 6 had placental blood clots. I spoke with pathologist and lead author of the study, Dr. Jeffrey Goldstein.
One, we think our maternal outcomes are pretty good. Two, in women that have more severe coronavirus disease or have other comorbidities or problems with their pregnancy, we don't know, we can't really say what that looks like.
Dr. Goldstein says women need closer monitoring. A larger study will be launched to look at pregnant women with underlying conditions. Atlanta City Council member Amir Faroqi surveying damages to several businesses in District 2 following recent protests.
That's going to do it for Stay at Home Connect. Have a safe evening.
Can one girl in a small town, an architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 10 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future by responding to the 2020 census. Where do we need new roads to make our lives easier? Where will new school programs help our children thrive? Where could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite. inspire, and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
I'm Phyllis Jackson. Thanks for joining us for Stay at Home Connect.
If you were out protesting last night, you probably need to go get a COVID test this week. Because there's still a pandemic in America that's killing Black and brown people at higher numbers.
Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms sharing concerns about the potential for new COVID-19 cases. She echoes the voices of medical professionals who are also worried about an increase in coronavirus due to protests. Demonstrations were sparked by the death of George Floyd, who was killed while under police custody in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Doctors are strongly encouraging protesters to wear face masks to protect themselves and those with whom they will come in contact, as large assemblies like demonstrations make social distancing difficult, if not impossible. A small Northwestern University study finds that COVID-19 may attack the placentas of pregnant women. 16 women were studied. One suffered a miscarriage. The remaining 15 delivered healthy babies, but 12 were diagnosed with malperfusion, a condition that limits blood flow between the mother and fetus. 6 had placental blood clots. I spoke with pathologist and lead author of the study, Dr. Jeffrey Goldstein.
One, we think our maternal outcomes are pretty good. Two, in women that have more severe coronavirus disease or have other comorbidities or problems with their pregnancy, we don't know, we can't really say what that looks like.
Dr. Goldstein says women need closer monitoring. A larger study will be launched to look at pregnant women with underlying conditions. Atlanta City Council member Amir Faroqi surveying damages to several businesses in District 2 following recent protests.
That's going to do it for Stay at Home Connect. Have a safe evening.
All right, it is 12 o'clock, so we're going to get started again. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Counselor Jennifer Ide. The time is now 12 on Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. We are in the middle of our second day of the second full week of our fiscal year 21 budget hearing. I'm joined by my Vice Chair, Howard Shook of the Finance Executive Committee. I know that we also have Council President Felicia Moore on the line, Councilmember Carla Smith, Councilmember Andrea Boone, Councilmember Marcy Overstreet, Councilmember Marcy Nadalyn Archibong, Councilmember Cleta Winslow, Councilmember J.P. Matsakite. If there is anybody else who I didn't recognize, give me a shout out so that we know that you're here. And there may be other council members who cycle in and out throughout the hearings, and I'll try to recognize them as they do. All of our presentations, budget summaries, and any budget modifications were emailed to council members. So please pull up your materials. They should have come to you this morning in email at 9:06. The public can view the hearings on Channel 26 on the Council Facebook Live, Twitter, and homepage, as well as YouTube, or can listen in via the conference bridges. And all presentations from departments, as well as all other budget materials, are available on the Council's website, located under the Finance Executive Committee Fiscal Year 21 budget page. We've also been joined by Councilmember Joyce Shepard. This morning we heard from the Department of Parks and Recreation and the Department of Law. We will kick it off in just a minute with the municipal court colleagues and the public. If you want to follow along, the municipal court's present budget is located on page 287 of the budget book. After the court, we have an hour allotted for the municipal court. After the court, we're going to hear from the Office of the Public Defender at 1 p.m. and the Office of the Solicitor at 1:30. We're going to stick to the same practice that we've had of starting on time, and if it doesn't take the full allotted time, we will go on mute and on hold, and then we will start back up at the scheduled time just to help with these remote logistics. So with that, I am going to welcome our Chief Judge, the Honorable Christopher Portis, as well as our Chief Clerk, Court Administrator, Rashida Davis. Judge Portis, feel free, if you have other members of your team, to introduce them, and otherwise we are ready for you to kick off your presentation. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and council members. Thank you for having us. On behalf of the Municipal Court of Atlanta, I am Chief Judge Christopher Portis. I am joined by the Chief Clerk of Court and Court Administrator this afternoon, Rashida Davis. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. I look forward to answering any questions that you may have and hopefully addressing any concerns. I will now turn it over to the Court Administrator to begin going through the presentation.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of City Council. I'm Rashida Davis, the Chief Clerk and Court Administrator for the Municipal Court of Atlanta. Thank you for having us here this afternoon. It's a pleasure to present our FY21 report to the City of Atlanta. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of our operation. Next slide. The mission of the court is to dispense justice impartially with equality and fairness while promoting respect for the justice system. This is the court's guiding principle for our organization. This is the standard that we apply for all of our team members. Next slide. We're going to go through some metrics for the court. This can hopefully paint a picture for you all about the work that's being performed by our team each and every day. Next slide, which would be the citation intake numbers. Citation intake is the amount of tickets that we receive from each jurisdiction each day. Most of our tickets are received from Atlanta Police, but we also do receive a number of tickets from Georgia State Patrol and other jurisdictions. For last year, we received a total of 145 citations, 145,000 citations. Next slide. Also in 2019, this is the number of cases that were created from those citations. Please understand that the numbers reflected are for the amount when they were entered into the system. So if a ticket is received in January, it might have been entered a couple weeks later in the following month. We created a total of 167,000 cases last year. Next slide. The next slide is just demographic information. So one of the questions that we receive is generally what types of tickets do we handle, what types of cases that we handle. As you can see, about 80% of our caseload is misdemeanor traffic offenses. The next large amount or group of cases that we hear are related to ordinance violations. Those are housing and code violations, any other types of ordinance that someone might be issued a ticket for. We also have about 4% of our caseload are civil cases. Those include parking and school bus tickets. Those are our kind of civil caseload. We also handle misdemeanor drug offenses and things of that nature. So that makes up the court's general caseload, and that was for 2019. We always like to juxtapose the current metrics from previous years. So at the next slide, you're able to see our caseload is very similar from the previous years for 2018, 2017, and also 2016. Next slide. I'm going to go into a little bit of fiscal year reporting. While the court is not in any kind of revenue generating business, it is important for us to kind of show for you all about our general receipts and our contributions to the general fund. Next slide. The next slide goes into the different funds and surcharges that are added to fines. These are based in state and local ordinance. As you can see, for 2019, for the peace officer training, we contributed $952,000. For peace officer pension, over $400,000. Crime victims, indigent defense, contributed over $900,000. Those are just to name a few of the outliers, and of course for the jail, we've contributed over $1 million. And again, these are based from state and local ordinances that fund these different areas. Next slide. The next slide reflects our fiscal year overall contribution. This is aside from the fees that are generated. This last fiscal year, you can see that it went up from 2018, and it's just shy of $25 million that was generated last year. Next slide. I'm going to get into some additional case information that also kind of can paint a picture about our team and what they do here. Next slide. It shows and displays our cases that are set for trial. Usually that's primarily with regard to our traffic offenses that generate trials, and of course our parking tickets. Individuals who receive parking tickets can be very vigilant, and so they oftentimes will have a trial in that matter. Right next to that slide is also a representation of really what it looks like here in our court. For the most part, individuals who are having a trial or pleading to offense are self-represented or pro se. Those are individuals who want to exercise their rights to handle the case on their own accord. Last year, it looks like about 157,000 cases were handled primarily by the defendant themselves. So that's about 94% of our total caseload are individuals who exercise their right to represent themselves on their matter. Next slide. The next slide is our case clearance rate. That is kind of a term of art in our industry. That is to say how many cases that are being taken in, heard, and processed out in our system. What does that look like? What does that reflect in a number amount? For the most part, we resolve our cases at or above 100%, which means the cases that are coming in are being closed and resolved. So we don't have any long-term open-ended cases that are not being resolved at our court. Next slide. The next slide reflects our bonds. Typically, as you can see, for the most part, individuals who are arrested or taken into custody, those individuals, primarily 2/3 of those individuals receive a signature bond. If they don't receive a signature bond from the Department of Corrections, because there might be some, other exacerbating circumstances. A judge might hear those facts and also issue a signature bond. And then there is a small portion that have to use a surety bond. And typically those cases are like DUIs, and those individuals have a good bond. Next slide. This is our failure to appear numbers. If you can look, we wanted to kind of give you a snapshot over time from 2017 to March of 2020 about where the failure to appear numbers are. These are individuals who are given a ticket with their court date in hand and do not appear on that date. If they don't appear on that date, what we do typically is we will send them correspondence in the mail. Next slide. And that correspondence will outline the opportunity to cure the FTA. So they're able to either pay for the ticket if they would like to or exercise their right to have a trial on those facts. But they are notified the very next day via mail about the FTA. Also, that information is available online, and that is real-time information in our system. In addition to the information being sent to the defendant, we also have and operate a full-time FTA court. Those individuals, again, can walk in and see a judge and resolve their case. Next slide. So juxtapose the numbers of FTAs with this slide here. This is how we can monitor our success with FTAs. And you can see how many cases, because of the information that they receive, because of the availability of our FTA court and judge, they're able to resolve and close out their cases. So last year, we were able to close out 27,257 FTAs, which is a feat in and of itself. Next slide. This is our customer service. Next slide. Our customer experience and responsiveness. So if you can draw your eyes to the chart, it basically shows the amount of calls that are received each month, the number of calls that are answered, and any kind of abandoned calls, which is a very small amount. For the most part, our partnership with ATL 301, I think they are able to talk and meet the needs of most callers. I think it's about at 95% of the call volume that is answered on the first call and attempt, which is really phenomenal. Next slide. The next slide is the top questions that individuals call and contact the call center and ask about. And of course, our number one question is, how much is my court fund and how can I pay? Some of the other major areas are, when is my court date and time? And how do I reset my court date? And what if I miss my court date? And then last but not least, some individuals will call that a 912 form. That is just a DDS document that allows them to reinstate their license, which might have been suspended for them not curing an FTA in the 30-day window that the law allows. Next slide. I'm going to go a little bit into some of our court programs. A bright light this fiscal year was the implementation of the Municipal Court of Atlanta's Homeless Court. That Homeless Court is presided over by our Chief Judge, Judge Christopher Porter. Next slide. The purpose of our Homeless Court is to provide a comprehensive, systematic approach to addressing the needs of our homeless defendants. And our overall goal is to try to help lessen the effects of a criminal history following these individuals around, and to really be a place where we can be creative with our alternative sentencing to help put them in a better position than they came to us. Next slide. Let's get into the demographics that make up our homeless court participants. We have 34 active participants in homeless court. Our team in Restore Atlanta has and continues to make contact with our participants every week. It is a requirement that they do check in and give any kind of updates about what they're doing in the program. The individuals that are participating have over 106 charges. 70% of them have prior felonies. 90% of the homeless court participants are male. And then we have a kind of racial ethnic background information as well. Next slide. Resources. A part of homeless court is taking the person as a whole and evaluating what their needs are. And so you can see 100% of them, of course, did not have housing. 100% of the participants did not have insurance. 73% of the participants had a need for mental health or substance abuse treatment. 76% of them did not have any identification or documentation, which we all know is a barrier to receive resources. And 92% of the participants didn't have any family systems or support systems. Next slide. We've already had great success in the homeless court, and this is just 2 examples. And we're going to keep them anonymous, of course, because we want to protect them. But I'm just going to give you a little breakdown about Client J, which is a member of our homeless court. That individual was homeless for about 7 years. They entered the program just this January and had a history of mental illness and, did not have a place to live. We have connected that individual with mental health services. They are volunteering in the community, trying to gain some additional skills and experience for full-time employment. And we're happy to report that we have secured temporary housing for this individual, and they are on track to receive some subsidized housing. The next example I'm going to give is Client G. That individual has been homeless for about 4 years. They entered the program earlier this year in February. They haven't had consistent work, and that was, of course, tied to documentation, which is critical to securing work and resources. We connected them with the Atlanta Mission, where they stayed there for a month, and since then they have obtained housing and have 2 jobs. They have a construction job, and they are also the groundskeeper at their new apartment. So the homeless court is doing great work in the community, and super proud of the team that makes up those very special individuals who spend a significant amount of time trying to connect individuals with resources and put them on a better footing. Next slide. In addition to homeless court, this is just one prong of our Restore Atlanta, which is our alternative sentencing arm, our community court. We have Teens Learning Control, which is an alternative sentencing program, and it provides individuals who are under 25 an opportunity to learn about the traffic laws and also to prevent them from having a traffic infraction on their history. Also, we have Restorative Justice, another alternative sentencing program for individuals under 25, and this provides education to them about how to make better decisions, how to prevent offending in the future, and also how to cope. As you can see our successes. For TLC, we've had over 1,200 individuals who have graduated from the Teens Learning Control program. And then Restore Atlanta, we've had over 200 individuals graduate from that program. Next slide. Part of the court is also focused on outreach to our youth to educate them about the branches of government, to inform them about their local community and what we do. We, at the top of the year, did weekly tours. Some of the participants in our tours of the court were Hollis Innovation Academy, Carver High, Westlake, and KIPP Atlanta. They were able to observe court, ask questions to the judge. They toured the jail, and then they met with our team here and were able to ask questions. It was just an opportunity them to learn more about branches of government and other jobs and careers. Next slide. Lastly, the court participates in the Code Enforcement Academy with Councilmember Shepard. This is an opportunity for us to as well inform our local citizens about what we do as a court and how we're here to be of service. So at this time, I just want to thank you guys for your time and attention, and we'll open it up for any additional questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Davis. I have first in line, I have Councilor J.P. Matsakite.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ide, and thank you very much for this presentation. And thank you specifically, Judge Portis, for the operation that you run over there. I had an occasion to be at the municipal court over a couple times this past year, and specifically to your court, and you run a great operation and do the city a wonderful, wonderful job of providing justice. So thank you for all your efforts and all of the team. My question is around the impact of COVID-19 on your operations. If you could talk a little bit about what that's done, how you're handling that, and how you see handling that going forward, and what the impact of that is on this budget. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Council Member, and thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be a part of this process and be a part of the City of Atlanta government structure. Like all departments, the implications of COVID has presented its own set of challenges. I'll tell you that the court has been in a position to maintain a certain continuity of operation since we initially closed to the public on March the 13th. My hat is off to the mayor's office, and in particular the chief operating officer and the chief information officer for putting in place certain frameworks that allowed us to seamlessly move from on-site operations to remote operations, as well as providing the processes to secure the items that are needed to not only keep folks safe, but also continue to serve the citizens of the city. We have continued to receive citations on a regular basis, and one of the lessons we learned from the cyber attack was the important need to continuously make case information available to the public, as well as allow them an opportunity to resolve those cases. So we have continued to take in cases. We've also continued to allow a platform and a mechanism to get those cases resolved as well. One of the things that we are keeping track of are the number of cases that continue to build that go unresolved over time. We do have a plan in place for when the time is right to remobilize staff and begin to handle a caseload and handle hearings inside the parameters that have been set forth by the CDC to do that safely. But we will do that when the time is right and when folks are considerably more comfortable and safe with coming out and coming to a place like this to handle that type of business. Throughout the COVID situation, we have maintained an operational workforce of at or about 50%, meaning that 1 out of every 2 employees, including judges at the court, have been actively engaged in some form of business process that has allowed us to keep our staff engaged as well as move the public's business forward. That is in part due to the work that the folks over in AIM have provided us with the platform, the mechanisms to do that, the machines, as well as the IT platforms. So our hats go off to them for making that happen and making it happen in such a fast manner. So we are continuing to monitor the cases, but as of right now, the intake of cases has not decreased, and we have continued to close cases even though not being open to the public. So we are fairly confident that when we do reopen, we will be able to do that in a seamless fashion.
Thank you very much, Judge Portis. That was all the questions that I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Matsakite, and thank you, Judge Portis. I do want to acknowledge because I think I missed them in the beginning. I think I said that Councilmember Joy Shepard was on the line. Councilmember Andre Dickens and Councilmember Michael Bond are also with us today. Before I move on to my colleague's question, just as a follow-up to Mr. Matsakite, so can you just describe to us so we can visualize, to the extent that court is running and you're doing proceedings, what's it looking like, even though the court is closed to the public? What does it look like as far as the the judges and the defendants?
Right. So right now, the regular court operations are suspended as they are for most courts across the country if it is not a critical hearing. The only hearings that are occurring 6 days a week are the in custody hearings for individuals who are in jail and who need to have a bond assessed. Those hearings are occurring remotely. So here at the court, we have social distance, the judge, the courtroom staff, the solicitor's representatives, as well as representatives from Atlanta Victim Witness physically present in the courtroom. And we've worked with our partners over in corrections to make sure that the inmates are in the safest possible environment. So the hearings are remote with the inmates over at the jail being brought in front of a video terminal, and the hearing is conducted remotely. This not only allows for there to be distancing amongst the defendants who are in custody, but it also does not require the physical moving of groups of people, which we know during this time could be a problem for the communicable effects of COVID-19. Right now, the jail calendar is entirely bond only, which means that only the issue of bond is taken up. For 9 out of 10 folks who are in custody, a signature bond or the individual is allowed to be released on copy of charges, and then they are given a future date for an arraignment. Some other things that happen, the solicitor's office in certain cases may dismiss the charge, and the only people who have any issue that may take a day or two are individuals who are in our system solely because they have a jurisdictional hold from someplace else. They may have an arrest warrant, for instance, out of Gwinnett County or something like that. They may be at our facility simply waiting to be picked up and taken out to Gwinnett. But that is it in a nutshell. The calendar time frame for running the calendar is about an hour or so to individually get each defendant placed in front of the camera to actually be able to speak with and engage with the judge. And after an hour, usually the calendar is finished, and we're doing that 6 days a week. The judges are rotating coming in. Everyone in the courtroom is wearing the recommended personal protective equipment of, at the very least, facial covering.
Thank you so much, Judge Portis. That's very helpful. I'm going to call on Councilmember Joy Shepard, and after Ms. Shepard, Councilmember Nadalyn Archibong, and if anybody else would like to get in line, let me know. So, Ms. Shepard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank the court system for all they do, the municipal court. Judge Portis, you are one of the greatest I've seen. I appreciate everything you do. And the administrative court system, you all do an awesome job. I've been over with you all on several occasions, and I really appreciate your thoroughness in terms of what you do. I also want to thank you all for your programs. Some of the programs we have at the court system are unbelievable. The restorative justice program with our youth, the homelessness, how y'all work with us with code enforcement, and so many other programs that I just can't even name all of them that you all are doing. So I really just want to say thank you all for your good work. One of the questions I have specifically is around, I want to correlate this to, on page 12, when you have the municipal court case analytics. Can you tell me, if, when I'm looking at that graph, those graphs there, is misdemeanor traffic, serious traffic, other ordinances, in terms of the number of cases that go to court? Am I correct in terms of how you all process them and the number of cases? How does that correlate to failure to appear? Can you give me, do you understand my question?
I need a little bit more on the question so I can make sure I'm giving you the answer that you're looking for.
So when I'm looking at this case analysis here, you all are talking about the cases. It says total self-represented cases, 94% of total cases. Now, so maybe I need to understand this chart, but it talks about, number one, traffic is high in terms of people coming to traffic court. Then you go on for serious traffic, others. Then you have ordinances, you have a lot of them.
Right.
And then non-criminal traffic, misdemeanors, goes on and on and on. My question is, these are people who are coming to court, obviously, maybe I need to ask a different question. Are any of these cases where people, what is the correlation, or if it's any, of failure to appear? So maybe it's not, because these are people obviously coming to court. So maybe I'm asking my own questions. But I just want to understand the failure to appear in terms of these court systems. Where is the most failure to appear? Maybe I need to just ask that question.
Well, because traffic makes up such a large percentage of the caseload, traffic cases tend to be where there is the highest prevalence of failure to appear. And with all of those cases, the original court date is on the citation issued by the officer, and that makes up the bulk. I guess to answer your question, where's the correlation? The prevalence of failure to appear in traffic cases is not much different than the prevalence in any other type of case. There is no greater likelihood that a person with a traffic citation will fail to appear versus someone who, for instance, has a housing code citation. We don't see that there is any indication that the type of case has anything to do with the chances of failure to appear, if that answers the question.
Okay. I was just trying to understand in terms of just looking at all of that. And in particular, let me just ask an open question. In terms of misdemeanors for drugs and things like that, is that, I know this up under misdemeanors, is that the same thing in terms of those cases? Is there any difference?
Yes, I mean, those cases, a lot of the drug cases that we would have here may be something like possession of drug-related object or possession of drug paraphernalia. Those cases would often be together with cases that an individual may have been picked up or arrested on. But nonetheless, the failure to appear likelihood rate does not change much from the type of case that it is.
Okay. And in terms of, I'm looking at your other page where your municipal court in terms of what to do if you failure to appear, and you all are very pretty much comprehensive in allowing people the opportunity to come out and pay their bond or whatever they need, not to bond, but pay for their failure to appear, to assess it and to fix it and all of that. So how is that going?
It is a resource-intensive operation, but as far as success, it's very successful because it gives individuals the opportunity to resolve cases even if they have missed the court date. And a lot of jurisdictions don't offer an open-door policy to clear that. But we also understand that sometimes the reason that someone didn't come to court is because they couldn't get off work or they had issues finding or securing child care to come into court. So our goal is to make sure that we are affording as much of an opportunity as possible to handle your business and get that business handled without the least impact to your life, especially a failure to appear warrant hanging over your head. So that is why with all of our cases, whether they're traffic or code enforcement, from the time that you miss your initial court date, you're at least afforded a 30-day window and notification and an opportunity to come in and try to get that corrected. If you come in off the street and your case was previously payable, you can handle that at the window anytime during the day. If you simply needed a new court date so that you could come back when it was able to be worked out with your employer, we will give you a court date within 2 weeks to come back and handle that. And if you need to see the judge, we have a dedicated FTA judge who will take you walking into court every day to be able to see a judge, talk about your case, and resolve it so that you can move on with the rest of your life.
Okay. Thank you for your service and how you all are doing a good job of running the court system there and doing everything that you can to actually give our citizens the right to their due diligence, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shepherd. Next up is Councilmember Archibald.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Judge. I know that I'm not the only one who's been contacted regarding Steph Roberts, who is a advocate and attorney and has been raising issues relative to the lack of public defenders being involved in assisting detainees, particularly those who've been arrested for curfew violations. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, well, I can speak to the mechanisms that are in place to ensure people have a fair and equal access to justice. I'll make the disclaimer that I don't manage the public defender's office, and no judge in any court system manages the public defender's office any more than they manage the solicitor's office. Those are two sides of a coin, one being the prosecution, the other being the defense, and it's my job.
Detected that a minimum number of lines are connected to this
It is our responsibility just to make sure that there is a middle-of-the-road approach and fair system in place. That being the case, number one, we make sure that the calendars that are being conducted are bond-only calendars, that they do not have to rise to the level of the type of appearance that a lawyer is absolutely necessary. An attorney may be present for a bond hearing, but it is not required. Secondly, if a defendant wants an attorney, we will either appoint the public defender's office and make contact with them to let them know that an appointment has been made, or if the public defender's office is unavailable, or there is a conflict where they can't represent a defendant, we will appoint an attorney to represent that person. So there is always a wheel of justice, so to speak, moving forward, making sure that those who want an attorney have the opportunity to have one appointed to them. And third, and most importantly, just understand that we are moving, especially with the individuals who are arrested and brought in as a part of the protest, to get them processed and in and out of the system as soon as we possibly can. So for many of the individuals that have been arrested participating in a part of the protest, those folks have been cycled in and out of the system in many instances in less than 12 hours, and in no event longer than 24 hours. If we get somebody in the afternoon, they will be in front of a judge the next day. For most, 9 out of 10, given a signature bond, a copy of charges, and given a future court date for an arraignment. And at that arraignment, they will still have the opportunity to apply for representation through the public defender's office or have an attorney appointed for them if they can't otherwise qualify or meet the requirements to get their own.
I think it was important. Thank you, Judge. I think it was important for the public to hear all of that so that the concerns relative to there being people who are having their rights violated, that they understand the full complexities and the balancing that you just described. So thank you for walking us through that. Now, is it true that the judges are handling the cases through video, something or other, the bond hearing, or... So I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yes. So the judges are physically in the courtroom with the courtroom staff. The solicitor's office and Atlanta Victim Witness are present in the courtroom here at the courthouse. And at the jail is the jail staff as well as the defendant himself. So that part is handled by video. That's not something that we just came up on our own with. It is something that has been recommended to be adopted by the majority of courts across this country in response to COVID, that if you have to have a constitutional hearing, that you do everything that you can to make sure that people are as safe as possible. So making sure folks remain distant, also making sure that if you don't have to do something, that you don't do it at least during this time. So that is why we conduct those by video. For us, The issue of constitutional rights are very important, but also the safety, the health of the general public is a major concern of ours, and we share that concern with the greater city of Atlanta as well. So we will continue to make sure that we have processes in place that not only protect rights, but also keep people safe and healthy to the best of our ability.
And that's all very good, and I'm grateful for that. But let's unpack that a little bit. You mentioned the judge. You mentioned the judge's staff. You mentioned the solicitor. What protections are in place for public defenders? And I know about the division of responsibilities, but we're talking about in terms of court operations, what provisions are made for the public defenders?
The public defenders, just like any other attorney, is welcome to come in and secure space in the courtroom. Our building has only one point of entry. Everyone must pass through that single point to be signed in, to be ensured that they have facial covering, and we have available hand sanitizer. Now, I will say that the court, as an administration, has not moved to undertake the providing of equipment directly to the public defender's office. The public defender's office, the court, and the solicitor's office were all a part of the coordination and planning that went forward from the mayor's office, conducted by the chief operating officer the days following our shutdown. Those meetings were handled daily. There is a process in place for the entire city of Atlanta and for all departments to be able to secure personal protective equipment, have that equipment delivered on site, tracked, and picked up. So for the court and the court employees, we have undertaken that responsibility to make sure that we did our part for our department. I have talked to Solicitor Carter. He's done the same for the folks who work in his office and who are under his responsibility. As for the folks in the public defender's office, I would assume that they have taken advantage of the processes that are in place, that have been in place since March, to be able to secure those items and distribute them to their staff as needed.
Well, you know, we can talk about this offline, but it occurs to me that as it relates to the public defender, the need to talk to clients in a safe environment is more than just PPE. There's a confidentiality. Where can you do it? Even if they had access to video conferencing, how could they consult with their clients? There are a lot of complexities here, and what I think I hear you saying is that the public defender's office needs to advocate for expenditures that help them do their job. But I would submit to you that I would think that the operation of the court would want to be mindful of these kinds of concerns, because the last thing we want for the city of Atlanta is the reputation for leaving those who have been charged with less than. And what that less than is can be any number of things. So I'm very, very concerned not only about the optics, but about operations and about having the right dollars and the right programs and technology available to help all parties that are involved in our judicial system. So we can talk about this out offline, but I'm still concerned. So thank you.
You will.
Is that the conclusion of your remarks, Councilmember Archibald?
I am aware that I have dominated too much time, so yes.
Okay. We have 15 more minutes, so if you have more questions, that's fine.
Now, I would like to hear from the judge as I want to hear from the solicitor, the public defender, and the judge around these issues. So it's an ongoing conversation between now and the final adoption of the budget. So I'm fine for right now. I think they heard my comments.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Councilmember Archibald. I share your concerns on this issue, and I understand that we will have the Office of the Public Defender with us this afternoon in the solicitor's office, and so we can round out and we'll have the opportunity to ask our questions of each of those departments as well. I have received several emails and calls from lawyers and constituents about the change of circumstances, and I don't know, Judge Portis, would it be, and some of those I think maybe have a mischaracterization that we are conducting unconstitutional proceedings. My understanding is for a first appearance of a municipal code violation, there's not a constitutional right to counsel, but it has been the City of Atlanta's general practice that we have provided above and beyond what the bare minimum constitutional need is, and we generally have made public defenders available before the COVID crisis. Is that okay?
Absolutely. The Public Defender's Office staffs on a regular basis the first appearance calendar, and business that is not ordinarily handled at first appearance is oftentimes afforded to the folks who come through our system because of the work that the public defenders are doing in the courtroom in conjunction with the solicitor's office staff. I mean, negotiating resolutions to cases on the spot and moving that forward. But obviously, the implications of COVID-19 have made some of those interactions that we used to enjoy less than ideal during this time. One thing that I will say, though, I have also talked to some of the attorneys who have gone over to meet with clients that they have in the detention center, and I have not heard that they were not able to meet with their client in a space that would permit attorney-client types of confidential conversations. So I guess the concern that the attorney-client conversations can't occur is a first for me, because literally we had attorneys here yesterday who had gone over to the jail, spoken with their clients, and then came back to the court to participate in the bond hearing and speak with the judge and the solicitor's office. So far, that process has worked seamlessly, with the exception of course, that there is the headache of things like requiring a face mask to enter the building and being distant and not being too close to other people. Outside of those headaches, the additional items are not something that have come up as an issue from at least the private attorneys that have had clients in this system since COVID.
Thank you, Judge Portis, and I'll just put out there, my personal opinion is, and I will share this with our Office of the Public Defender, if we can ask public works employees and public safety employees and court employees to, with the proper equipment and precautions, continue to serve, I feel like we should be able to ask our public lawyers to do that as well. But I know that they don't report to you, and that's a discussion that we can have with Mr. Days. I did just want to clarify some of the concerns, though, that there are unconstitutional proceedings going on, that it sounds like you and the judges of our Atlanta Municipal Court are very aware of where the boundaries of where a lawyer is required constitutionally and not, and you're going to be aware of that when you're conducting proceedings.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, we will continue this conversation with Mr. Days and Mr. Carter so we can get, the fullest understanding of what's going on, and if there is a need for additional funding related to COVID precautions, we can advocate for their department so that they can get back up and running. I will ask my colleagues to sort of raise your hand. I see you, Councilmember Archibong. Anybody else get in line? I'm going to ask my last question. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Archibong. I have been asking different departments sort of what learning lessons they have had from being in a remote environment, because I think sometimes when we're pushed to do things differently, we learn how to do things more efficiently or in a different way. So I don't know if maybe things that you haven't implemented yet, but if it's made you think differently about how we could handle more cases without people coming into the court. I've had the experience of a document case where, it takes an awful lot of time for somebody to come in for a document case. That document could have been set in, document could have been checked on another government website. You and I have also had some discussions in the past about trying to implement an e-citation system that helps you manage your calendar better, helps people who are getting a citation get a a nicely printed typed citation instead of a handwritten citation that you may not be able to read the date on. So I just don't know what your thoughts are on use of technology or other ways to manage the courtroom that maybe you've had time to reflect on while you've been running a remote courthouse.
Yeah, one of the things that really stands out for us that we're working on now is a way for individuals who are otherwise interested and eligible for alternative programs to be able to select, enroll, and participate in those programs without physically having to come to the courthouse to do that. That is one of the things that's on the very front end of what we're trying to do. For instance, we get a very sizable number of individuals who have traffic citations who are 21 years and younger. Most of the time, those cases are pulled out and placed in an alternative program. We want to come up with ways that allows the public to be able to select, engage, and enroll and handle that business without ever physically coming to the courthouse. One of the most, serious implications of COVID for our court and for courts every place is the nature of court business. I mean, this is an institution that up to now has completely and solely relied upon personal, in-person participation. And even the questions about FTA, I mean, the whole idea of an FTA is you were told to come to court and you did not do it. So the whole mechanism of a court and a place where individuals are called into a room and wait their turn to speak with the judge or speak with the prosecutor, that entire system is something that we are figuring out ways to do differently and do through technology. But the first order of business on our list is figuring out how individuals can gain access to programs, participate and complete those programs without ever having to physically come to 150 Garnett Street. And I'll keep you posted on our project progress. That's something that we're working on right now.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Councilmember Archibald.
All right, thank you. I wanted to make a comment and then ask a question. And you don't have to react to it, Judge, but I think there's a measurable difference between an attorney coming in to represent his client and being able to go through consultation and the bond hearing versus having an influx of potential clients who may need a public defender. There's staffing challenges. There's the confidentiality, where can you have conversations with people when you have this volume. I think we need to be real about the real challenges. The public is counting on us to be nimble and to be sensitive and to be responsive. And so you don't have to respond, but I didn't think the example really got to the point of what my concerns are. My question is relative to the FTEs. There's a increase in the number of FTEs. Did you go over or did someone explain to us why there's a change there, an increase?
Fair to appears? Is that the question?
Full-time equivalent.
The question is about your employee, your head count.
Yes. No, well, the head count for the employees has maintained steady. I mean, we haven't terminated any employees during the COVID period, but we're anticipating that moving forward into the next fiscal year, that amount remains constant. And if it was a question regarding the participation rate of the number of folks that we actively have engaged in any given day conducting business, it is at least 50%. Is there another question in that regard that I'm missing?
Well, maybe you're not the one that prepared this. I'm trying I move my budget book around from having trouble.
It may be a question for Ms. Davis.
The full-time equivalent, I can ask this question, thank you. The full-time equivalent, I appreciate your trying to help me. The full-time equivalent was different. It was a higher number, and I just wanted to understand why. And I understand about retaining staffing and all that, but it was an increase in full-time equivalent. So if Ms. Davis could respond, thank you, Ms. Odd, I would like to have a better understanding of that.
Good afternoon.
I see what you're referencing with regard to the 182 position count. I do believe that that might be a scrivener's error. We are not increasing any positions for this fiscal year. I believe all of the positions here are just going to be remaining flat, and the Department of Human Resources is only going to fund fully funded occupied positions for this upcoming fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. I was going to wonder how you were going to have that many more full-time equivalents at the salary level listed. So thank you very much for that clarification. That concludes my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Archibong. And I will circle back with our budget team on that. That I know that there were some headcount discrepancies between funding and that there were still some unfunded vacancies shown in the numbers, and this may be one of those situations. So I'll circle with the administration and see if that's something that needs to be cleaned up as we do the budget amendments. Well, thank you so much, Judge Portis and Ms. Davis, for being with us today and answering all of our questions. You all do run a fantastic courthouse. I'll have to say I'm in the same boat as Councilor Matsakite, that I've had the opportunity to be over there with you over the last year or two on occasion. And it's a lot of people management, and you all do a tremendous job moving people in and out. I'll also have to say that my oldest daughter is a proud graduate of the TLC Teen Driving Program, so I very much appreciate that program, but it is a way for teens to keep their points off their license and to keep it off of their parents' insurance. But I'll also give a plug that it has made her a much safer and more thoughtful driver. It's not an easy, breezy program to get yourself through, so it was good. It was a very good, meaningful experience for her. So you all keep doing your good work. Let us know if there's anything else that you need, particularly on the COVID front as we work through our papers for our COVID funding that we have available. Reach out and let us know. Make sure that you're getting everything you need there. And we're going to take a 2-minute break, and we will be back with the Office of the Public Defender. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
ready to go. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Councilor Jennifer Ide, the Chair of the Finance Executive Committee. It is now 1:02 p.m. on Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. We are halfway through our second day of our second full week of the fiscal year 21 budget hearings. I am joined this afternoon by my Vice Chair, Howard Shook, of the Finance Executive Committee. We also have with us on the phone Council President Felicia Moore, Council members Carla Smith, Andrea Boone, Marcy Overstreet, Madeline Archibong, J.P. Matsakite, Cleta Winslow, Joyce Shepard, Andre Dickens, Michael Bond, and I believe that is it for now. Colleagues, if I missed you, I apologize. If you'll just let me know if you're on. I'm happy to recognize you. All right, council members, I'll recognize others as they join. Council members generally cycle in and out of these budget hearings as they are able. For the public, all of the budget materials, including the presentations that you're about to see, are available on the City Council website, located under the Finance Executive Committee's Fiscal Year 21 budget page. If you are listening in and would like to watch the presentation right now, it's available on Channel 26, on the City Council Facebook Live feed, Twitter feed, the City Council homepage, and YouTube, or you can just listen in on the conference bridge. Today we've heard from the Department of Parks and Recreation, the Department of Law, Municipal Court. If you've missed those presentations, again, those will all be available on the City Council website. And to close out this afternoon, we're going to have the Office of Public Defender right now. Their presentation is on page 413 of the budget book. We have just a half an hour from 1 to 1:30 slotted for the Office of Public Defender, and then at 1:30 we have the Office of the Solicitor. And so I am going to welcome our Public Defender, Kenneth Days III, as well as his Deputy Public Defender, John DePaia. And Mr. Days, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce anybody else on your team you have with you, and then you are welcome to start your presentation. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Councilmember Ide. The only other person I have with me today is our our Deputy Director, Mr. John Tapia. Good afternoon, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to have the opportunity to speak to you today. I'd like to start by identifying what the core function of the Office of the Public Defender is. First and foremost, that is to provide a professional legal counsel to individuals that are qualified as indigent and who are charged with offenses in the municipal court. In our operational capacity as what we term a holistic defense practice, we also directly address the collateral issues that are often associated with the populations that we serve. That can include insufficient housing. It can include the need for sustainable employment, a loss of benefits, the necessity for treatment of mental health and or substance dependency, as well as the absence of personal identification, or in fact, in most instances, a combination of those issues. So as part of our mission as well, we partner regularly with community-based third-party service providers, some faith-based organizations, and additionally other departments to access and engage restorative measures that can not only improve an individual's quality of life, but also increase public safety at a more efficient cost basis. If you take a look at our first slide that you see on the screen, it gives an overview of the case type that we handle and an estimated number of cases within each of those categories. So you'll see the first one, we tend to represent about 3,000 DUIs annually. In fact, our office tends to have the highest number of DUI representations in the state of Georgia. And this past fiscal year, our numbers overall have decreased dramatically. And I think that was based primarily on the strong employment numbers that existed prior to the pandemic. And so we had fewer qualifications for services. So what I want to point out is that what you see in those graphs is actually estimates. Our numbers have sort of vacillated, give or take 4,000 or 5,000 cases annually, somewhere between 25,000 to 34,000 over the past few years. We anticipated that number would be reduced maybe by as much as 30%, but again, with the operations with the courts not operating at full capacity, there was no way to measure that. But again, I think those estimates are still very close to the numbers of cases we handle in each category. And so we also use a lot of targeted measures to focus on outreach programming. And so with community partners, we are able to reduce the number of chronic recidivists that are arrested in the first place. And that relates directly to the job referrals that we make, the housing assistance that we provide, and the assistance with pre-arrest diversion that we offer. Our post-pandemic forecasts are anticipating that we will probably have a substantial increase in the number of appointed cases to the office, particularly with traffic citations, because those tend to somehow follow very closely with economic trends. And so with the unemployment numbers being where they are, we will more than likely see a substantial uptick in arrestable offenses such as no insurance or suspended registration and suspended licensing charges. So the anticipation is that for FY21, we would likely have a substantial increase in the number of cases that we have overall. But one of the distinct benefits that we have in focusing on outreach with our clients and community partners, as well as engaging proactively with the vulnerable population through a sense of trust building, is that where we provide a form of pretrial mitigation, it typically results in about a third of those cases being dismissed outright. And so public defense as a whole, successes usually come through involving sort of a methodical, long-term strategic measures to be able to stabilize individuals, which will ultimately stabilize a family, which will ultimately stabilize a neighborhood, and in turn, a whole community. So I want to point out also on this social services on the first slide, it represents the 2019 calendar year for the same reason we provided the estimates. We couldn't provide you with accurate numbers for our fiscal year, so we facilitated the numbers for the entire calendar year of 2019, so you get a picture of exactly the type of social services and the number of individuals that we are able to provide those services to. If we can go to the second slide, please. Some of the successes this past fiscal year that I believe are very well worth mentioning. We fully launched our Immigration Defense Unit, which implemented the Mayor's Office's Access to Counsel initiative. In collaboration with the Vera Institute of Justice, we were able to make over 101 Padilla immigration advisories directly from the municipal court. We are also in partnership with the Vera Institute of Justice, where we received grant funding. We're considered a Safe Cities Network legal service provider. We've also been selected as a founding site for the AmeriCorps Volunteer in Service to America program, wherein we train members in community-oriented defense. As a representative of our office, we've been appointed to the Defender Council of the National Legal Aid and Defender Association. And what that allows us to do is actually advise its board on national best practices and policies related to providing defender legal services. And that's in large part due to the successful operations that we provide in such a high volume court. I believe the numbers pan out that the Municipal Court of Atlanta is probably one of the largest volume courts in the Southeast. We have also implemented a competitive law school externship program involving criminal defense and what's known as crimmigration. We've conducted national webinars in sustainability for innovation funds for the MacArthur Foundation's Safety and Justice Challenge. We've had at least 2 of our attorneys this year acquire instructor certifications through the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration for DUI training. And what that means is that 2 of our attorneys are now have the competencies to instruct private counsel on how best to defend DUI cases. Our attorneys have also participated this past fiscal year in the Young Litigators Moot Court Program as coaches, and I'm proud to say that we had 2 winning teams. We've also had multiple appellate victories and reversals which have clarified some of the ambiguities that exist in the city code. We operate right now currently either weekly and or monthly clinics with the At Promise Center in Vine City, with the pre-arrest diversion, with the City of Refuge, with Antioch Baptist Church, and with Lutheran Church of the Redeemer in Midtown. We've also conducted presentations for the Atlanta Citizens Review Board and sort of proactively begun the process of working with that board to establish some reporting efficiencies between our respective offices. We recognize that we had not been communicating probably as effective as we should have been in the past. And so now we've worked together to set up some ways that some of the reporting and data collection can be shared amongst our 2 agencies to provide more information to the public and to provide better outcomes. We have also presented at the Code Enforcement Training Academy for the 2nd year in a row. On a monthly basis, we conduct homeless outreach services, what we call street outreach, and that's in collaboration with the Atlanta Police Department's HOPE team. Also, this past November, we held our first annual Thanksgiving event, where we were able to, our office alone was able to provide approximately 250 meals to homeless individuals, and we had at least 9 service providers come to that event to offer their specific services in provision to the homeless participants. Another community-oriented outreach that we've been able to expand upon is our driver's license restoration program for clients, members of the NPUs, and some of our community partners through our legal clinics. What we have known is that the number 1 arrested violation in ACDC typically is for a suspended license. And a lot of times that's based solely on the fact that a lot of individuals just don't know how to navigate the process of having their license restored. It's a very complicated process, and if you don't really know what questions to ask, you can kind of get bogged down in a lot of paperwork. And so we have a program that advises people and actually helps them and walks them through that process. And so we were able to expand that program this year. And so that has actually put a lot of people back on the driver's license rolls and allowed them to have transportation to go to work, school, and other. We've also had multiple employment placements this year through our employment program. And as part of that program, we have also introduced a financial literacy component to really increase each program participant's job stability. It's one thing to have the ability to have employer partners who are willing to give our clients second or even in some instances third chances at sustainable employment, but we recognize the other side of that coin is also to make sure that they are stable enough to keep those jobs. So we developed the financial literacy component, wherein we have we conduct an in-office workshop over the course of several weeks to get the participants up to speed So again, that they can maintain both job stability, housing stability, and other. We did an office-wide CPR training this fiscal year, as well as office-wide defensive driving training. And I previously mentioned our Padilla training. What that is the United States Supreme Court mandated in the Padilla case that any defense attorney who's representing any client is required to advise clients of any deportation consequences that may exist in a case. And that tends to be quite frequent on traffic cases. And over this past fiscal year, we had, because of the training that we have conducted, we've had at least 101 of those participants adequately advised. And so it goes to the nature of the work that we do and the importance in offering a full complement of services to everyone that comes into our office. We also introduced this past year a new program that we deem the Lawyers Initiative for Transforming Society, or under the acronym LIFT. What we are doing with that is we are formally beginning to do what we have done as an office for the past 10 or 12 years, but now what we're doing is establishing more formality to work with other jurisdictions and some of the local service providers to assist in reducing some of the obstacles that exist for housing placement, be it shelter assistance placement or temporary housing placement or even transitional housing placement. So working directly with those agencies and having an avenue and more or less a direct line and a point of contact has made connecting and getting people placed into transitional housing a lot faster than it otherwise would have been without this program. And I would be remiss if I did not also mention some of the work that we did at the At Promise Center, or are doing at the At Promise Center in Vine City as well. All of our staff, we have several staff members who after work go to the At Promise Center and mentor the students that are there, but they also have been teaching chess, conducting cooking classes, and at the beginning of the school year, we actually had a backpack drive where we filled over 150 backpacks with school supplies, the backpacks and the supplies, all of which were donated by our staff. As an office, we currently have 40 full-time employees that are filled. We have 5 vacancies, and as you all are aware, our budget for this fiscal year was $3,898,181. We anticipate and recognize that our budget will remain flat for FY21, which I actually believe is appropriate until we can adequately determine or make a determination how much of an increase in case volume we may have over the course of the next few months. I believe we may not understand what that number is until right around potentially October, but I don't believe we can responsibly predict with any type of certainty on how our operations will need to adapt to what I think will inevitably be a new set of protocols and procedures in regards to our service delivery functions. There are some national recommendations that have been made that we intend to follow. However, I think we won't necessarily know what works best until we measure the results of those new practices. I think it's quite obvious that the national pandemic has frustrated our abilities to make accurate analysis of staffing and in some instances what our needs are currently. But again, in my experience, I think we will have all of that critical information by the second quarter of the fiscal year, and we can then accurately know what our optimal needs may be going forward. And at this time, I'm pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Days. All right, colleagues, if you have a question For the Office of a Public Defender, please put your virtual hand up, send me a message. I want to recognize, I believe we've been joined by Councilmember Matt Westmoreland. I think I missed him at the beginning. While I am waiting to see who else has a question, I do have a few questions myself, Mr. Day. So you said you have 40 total employees within your office, I believe. What is the breakdown of that, of attorneys, paralegals, social workers, who all works in the Office of Public Defender?
Yes. Right now, that comprises of the 40 full-time employees, are 24 of whom are attorneys. We have 16 support staff, which comprises of approximately 2 social workers, 3 client advocates, 4 investigators, and 7 administrative support staff, which would include paralegal, data tech, and data analysts.
Okay. Can we flip back to, I think it was the second slide. It was one that had the bar chart that described the cases. Yes.
That involved the bar chart. Yes. I'm sorry. That's the first slide.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood this slide. Is this showing where the PD is providing representation, or is this showing overall cases that come through the municipal court?
No, not overall cases that come through the municipal court. Those are broken down by case type just for our office.
Okay, so you're handling 15,000 traffic cases where you're providing representation on an annual basis?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I have a few other questions, but okay. We had somebody, Councilmember Overstreet's going to have to loop back with us. So I'm going to just jump in. I don't know if you were listening to our discussion with the municipal court, but, there was an email to you last night that you were kind to respond to after hours, that there has been, a lot of public concern raised about whether people who have been arrested in the city, particularly related to the protests, are being provided with an attorney through the public defender. So I'm just going to ask you if you can address that to council and to members of the public that are dialed in.
Yes, and I certainly understand the concerns that I think the citizens were making, and unfortunately, and not being one that is on social media, what I do understand quite acutely is that the original sort of things that went out from the citizens became viral, and it was not accurately reflecting what's been happening or the processes or procedures that we undertake. And so I can best address it this way in that, first and foremost, as an office, our priority is service delivery and I mean legal service delivery at every possible phase of the criminal process. We are one of the very few public defender offices in the nation. And I want to repeat this. We're one of the few public defender offices in the nation that actually provide counsel at first appearance or bond hearings. In fact, when we are in other jurisdictions or at conferences, we usually are having to describe how we're able to accomplish that task because it's so very rare that defense counsel is made readily available at that bond hearing. And that's just a procedural issue. Obviously, the pandemic required a sort of immediate restructuring of the way every department performs its functions. And that would include our office, it included the solicitor, it included corrections staff, as well as the court. But you can't stop the entire delivery of services. And so what has happened in that time, in the past 2 months, is being mindful of the fact that we have not, had a cure to COVID-19. I think making a rush to continue to try to deliver the same optimal services that we have been under a different format, from my view, would be somewhat irresponsible until we had a better handle on the way we can optimally deliver that service piece. And as I think the court may have already said this, that over the past weekend, the numbers of arrestees that have been in jail increased by probably about 150% inside of a day or two. And so what that meant for us is to have to adapt very quickly to decide how best we deliver a service that is not necessarily a part of what you would consider to be a normal function of representation, but one that we, however, have always provided. And so we understood the necessity of it. In fact, there are a team of lawyers at the courthouse and the jail right now to offer those services that the constituents have talked about. We have attorneys who have been here. We're right now in the office, and we've had a few attorneys come in the office to get some supplies to go over to the courthouse and to the jail. So ultimately, we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. But we have to always be mindful that we're performing those tasks and delivering those services, not only in considering all the ethical considerations, but also doing this as safely as possible. You may or may not be aware, but last week, Los Angeles County had a public defender who died because they were doing what amounted to bond hearing at their jail. And that same office, and this is reported from last week, has had 8 attorneys who have contracted COVID-19. And this is with an office that has PPEs. So there is a very real concern around what our practices should be. And of course, we want to be thoughtful about making sure that we're providing the best services, but also doing that in a very safe manner. And I think when you're inundated with more than 10 times the number of arrests being made, and you're having to operate in 4 different places. And what I mean by that is we would ultimately, as a function, we would have to operate in both the jail, at the courthouse, at our offices, and to some extent within the community. And so from a practical standpoint, I also need to be considerate of the fact that there are possibilities that some of our staff members could become super spreaders. And so we want to make sure that anything we do is done with that in mind, that we're not only providing the same service delivery, but we're doing it as optimally as possible and as safely as possible.
Thank you for that response. I do want to just say publicly, because we had this discussion with Judge Portis, I do think there's some misunderstanding from some members of the public that there is not a constitutional right to have a public defender at a first appearance for a municipal code violation. So I do just want to address that concern, and I want to just confirm with you, Mr. Days, that is your, that is your stance also, that not providing a public defender has not violated anybody's constitutional rights, because what the city of Atlanta's practice has gone above and beyond the constitutional minimum in the past. And so while we have changed the practice, these are not proceedings that a lawyer is required constitutionally. Is that, we on the same page on that?
That's correct. That's 100% accurate.
Okay. That being said, it does concern me, and I absolutely want all of our City of Atlanta employees to be safe. I do think many other departments have found ways to get back to work, and the past weekend and the protests and the volume have been exceptional, and that probably would have called for different measures. But it's been 10 weeks since my understanding is that we have not been having public defenders representing defendants. So I just want to say to you, we don't know how long this is going to go on. We don't know if we're going to come back and we're going to have to go back into this posture again. And so I hope that you all are working on a strategy of how you can continue to provide representation, even if we are under COVID precautions. If it's a matter of resources, if it's a matter of PPE, let City Council know so we can advocate for that. But it's not really acceptable to me that we'll continue this and continue paying for people to, work for the Department of Public, the Office of Public Defender. We've got to be creative. We've got to get people serving our residents and constituents in other ways. If you need to do it a different way, we need to do it a different way. But I have some concern that the pause button has been pushed, and we just need to get people back being productive, meeting the mission that we have set out for the Office of Public Defender.
Yes, I'm sorry.
You're welcome to respond.
Yes, Councilmember, I also wanted to just sort of clarify one of the points in that our attorneys have been operating as normal, with the exception of an appearance at the bond calendars, because again, I think those calendars have averaged somewhere between less than 10 individuals on a daily basis. I think it typically averages around 4, 5, or 6 individuals at a bond calendar prior to this weekend over the last month. But what we have been doing as a procedural method is our in-custody staff pulls those, because we still have access to the records of the individuals that have been arrested. And so what they have been doing is using the database that all the judicial agencies use to pull the information, what information is available to us. We've been pulling that data off of the system and creating a file and notating the reset date for arraignment, so that we already have essentially the initial information that we otherwise would have at a first appearance, so that when that person does return to court for an arraignment, in anticipation that there is a strong likelihood that we may be appointed to that case, we already have an attorney who has been arguably working that case. And if there is a phone number or a contact information available for those individuals, we have also been contacting those people on a regular basis. So there has not been any lapse whatsoever in the performance of duties. And as I should also say, we still have literally thousands of active cases that are still being actively worked. The pandemic did not absolve us of our responsibility to continue doing everything that we could on the cases that were already active, which again numbers in the thousands. So there is more than enough work for our attorneys to continue to do. And again, in fact, only difference in the delivery of services has just been the fact that the bond calendars do not have someone physically present. But those calendars are being monitored on a daily basis, and in some instances, again, where we are able to, we were making contact with those individuals to discuss what needs to happen at arraignment. And same thing with every type of case that has been an arrestable offense. There's been absolutely no stalling in the delivery services whatsoever. And so the attorneys are actually putting in the same amount of time, if not more now, because I think it makes it a little bit more difficult to have to navigate, personal cell phones and laptops and still sort of be in 3 places at once the way we normally function. So yeah, the service delivery piece is there in the exact same manner, with the exception of the bond hearings.
All right, thank you for that clarification. I was going to raise that issue because I know you're very aware that when we passed 18-1045, that was our cash bail reform piece, that we did
that a minimum number of lines are connected.
That we did sort of expand the function of the public defender to specifically provide assistance with jail discharge and assist with the coordination of social services for defendants. So I certainly hope that is still going on as we have so many people who are getting out on signature bonds. Hope the public defender is there to play the role in making sure that those people have resources that they need and whatever support they may need to make sure they come back and appear when it's their day in court, if they do have to come back to court. We are running long, but I'm going to let us go a little bit over, and I'm going to recognize Councilmember Joyce Shepard, and then after Ms. Shepard, Councilmember Overstreet.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ide. Mr. Davis, thank you for all your service. I want to say that to you all. And I really concur with what Ms. Ives and Ms. Archibald have been saying in terms of your needs and the concerns in terms of making sure we provide the services. As a public safety chair, if there's anything that you need from us, let me know. Call me, pick up the phone. Just let me know what's going on. I would appreciate that so much. And I do appreciate your services. But I'm hearing some things today that I didn't know about, and so just keep me abreast of what's going on. And thank you, Ms. Odd and Ms. Archibald, for your support and concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shepard.
Thank you, Councilmember Shepard. Councilmember Overstreet.
Yes, thanks, Chair I, and I'll be brief because we are over time, and honestly, most of the information that I need to get later, and you've addressed a couple of them of really important issues here today already. But definitely want to make sure I took the chance to thank this department for all that you do. This is such a crazy time, and I know that it's a real learning curve for you all too, and that there's nothing easy about maneuvering through what is being thrown your way from a pandemic, and now we're coupling that with protests and curfews and just a total different way of having to do business. And thank you for your hard work and your diligence through this whole process. And I also wanted to acknowledge that I appreciate your holistic slides on your presentation. Those are the things that really give back to our budget tenfold, because we're taking care of the people that need it the most. So let's stay positive and continue to work hard. And thank you for your presentation and all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. Councilmember Westmoreland.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure. There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually had a question. Toward the end of your comments, you raised a question about our cash bail reform. Could you restate the question or what we changed in that legislation? And then I'd like to hear and ensure that we are following through on that piece of the ordinance right now.
Sure. So when we did that legislation in 2018 that eliminated the requirement of the payment of a cash bond for nonviolent offenses, part of what we did, and that was 18.0.1045, was under Section 6229, that's public defender and assistant. We added some wording that said, in addition, the public defender is authorized to provide assistance with jail discharge planning, assist with coordination of social services for defendants, and apply for grant funding on behalf of the city to support these efforts pursuant to the city's procurement code. And we expanded it to not just be providing representation of, but also the provision of legal services to indigent defendants who are tried in municipal court.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Days, has that been happening since the pandemic started?
Yes, that's one of the core requirements that I've mandated that our office do. I think, quite early on, prior to taking the role as director, I operated as a sort of a frontline attorney for 10 years. And so one of the things we recognize all along is that the faster that we can engage in some of that service delivery, the better our outcomes would be. And so, as I stated really in the beginning, I think when you talk about some of the discharge planning is we recognize at that first appearance or at the arraignment that we have a client that has a housing issue or an employment issue or a benefit issue or a mental health issue or a substance dependency issue, then we want to put a holistic team around that to sort of address those needs even prior to them coming back to dispose of the case, because that gets us to that 1/3 dismissal rate, and typically it makes so that the chronic recidivists cease to be recidivists at all, and because now they're made sustainable in their lives, in that we've addressed the collateral issue that probably brought them in front of brought them to the court in the first place. So usually the arrests that tend to happen on our end and the clients that we serve, and I'm speaking not of the traffic-related cases, but of the city ordinance violations, have to do with some other issue. And so usually if we can tackle that issue, then that's a person that you don't see cycling back. And so as much as the importance of work of our attorneys are, I think it's just as equally important the work that the attorneys and the social workers and the client advocates do, if not more, because what they're actually doing is reducing those numbers of people that are coming in contact with the criminal justice system at all.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Westmoreland, and Councilmember Natalie Archibald.
Few questions. All right, thank you very much. The question that I have is regarding the concerns that have been raised most recently by constituents and other attorneys relative to what is going on with the detainees who have violated the curfew, or charged with violating the curfew. In talking with the chief judge, he mentioned that the private attorneys have had no issues with meeting with their clients and being able to prepare them for bond hearings. I submitted to the judge that it's one thing to have a client, it's another thing to have, a lot of clients waiting in the queue to talk to a public defender. So the experience that your men and women are having in trying to meet with their clients at the jail, can you walk us through that?
Right now, I think we have a team right now that is at the jail, and so I would probably be able to report back to you what the day is looking like today. As I think we have a team right now that is at the courthouse and another team that is at the jail right now to handle those hearings. And I could potentially report back to you and let you know what that delivery system has looked like. In the past, you're 100% accurate in the fact that it is a much different scenario to have one client to focus on versus 10 or 12 or 15 clients per attorney, whose cases need to be disposed within the same court session. So it's a different delivery of services for us. But again, because we're dealing with that level of volume, we have certain internal practices that we require from how we open up a file, sort of the things that we advise clients on every single solitary case. We don't miss any steps. I take pride in the fact that I think the way we conduct our representation has been recognized nationally, in as much as we are often invited to other jurisdictions to advise them on how they can adopt some of our best practices. And so, again, we do go over and above what is considered an adequate standard for public defense, in both in training and in practice, because I believe that everyone deserves the appropriate superior legal services, despite what your income status is. And so, as it relates to the current hearings, I won't know that until those hearings are concluded as of today, because again, we do have a team there now that is assessing how we can best serve that number of individuals in two locations. So we have, because we are going to be at the courthouse and we're at the jail right now. So I can probably best answer that in a few hours.
I am interested in hearing that, and this is a budget hearing, and so the excellent work that you're doing and going over and above and beyond what is constitutionally required, that's our brand. And thank you for continuing to provide the level of services that you've described. But this is a budget hearing, and so what I'm listening for are areas where there's increased need or where there are gaps that we need to revisit relative to the budget. So in that vein, I would like to hear from you when you have more data or when you have some empirical, sort of basis for the volume, and give us the trends, and so we can better understand our ability to continue to deliver the excellent services that your office has been known for. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
All right, let me just double check. I believe that is is there anybody else? I do want to recognize that Councilmember Andre Dickens has joined us during this hearing. Is there anybody else who had their hand up who has a question or a comment for Mr. Days? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I apologize that we kept you longer than we had said that we would. I think we would all love an update now that you're sending lawyers to the jail and the courthouse. We'd love an update on how that goes. And as Councilor Archibald said, if there are any additional resources that you need, let us know, and we're happy to help with that. And with that, we are going to move forward with the city solicitor. So thank you, Mr. Days, to yourself and your office and all that you do. And please do update us on how things go. And we do want you all to keep safe as you figure out how to get back to a more of an in-person presence. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I certainly will keep you updated, and I appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you.
Thank you. We have violated my rules of rolling over. I'm going to give 1 second so that we can pull up the next presentation and make sure that we have our city solicitor, Mr. Carter, and his team on the phone, and we will be ready to kick things back off in just a minute or two. All right, we are ready to kick off our fifth and final budget hearing of today. This is Councilor Jennifer I, the chair of the Finance Executive Committee. It is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020 at 1:51 p.m. I'm joined by my Vice Chair, Howard Shook, of the Finance Executive Committee, and I believe we have with us today Felicia Moore, our council president, council members Carla Smith, Andrea Boone, Marcy Overstreet, Natalie Archibong, J.P. Matsakite, Cleta Winslow, Joyce Shepard, Andre Dickens, Michael Bond, Matt Westmoreland, And I believe that is it, but please let me know if I have left you off, and there may be council members who loop back in with us. If you're listening on the conference line, the public, and you want to see the materials, you can find them on Channel 26, the City Council's Facebook Live, Twitter, Council homepage, and YouTube. All of our budget presentations, if you've missed them from earlier this week or the last 2 weeks, are available on the Council's website located under the Finance Executive Committee Fiscal Year 21 budget page. We have heard from Parks and Rec, and then our Law Department, our Municipal Court, our Public Defender, and our last presentation of the day is the Office of Solicitor. That is on page 371 of our budget book. So I want to welcome our City Solicitor, Raines Carter. I also want to apologize for keeping you waiting for 20 minutes. I've really tried to keep us on schedule, but we had some important discussions that we needed to have with the Office of Public Defender, so I appreciate your patience with us. I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Carter and ask you to let me know who else you have, introduce your team that you have with you today, and after you do that, you're welcome to kick off your presentation.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. This is Raines Carter, City Solicitor, and thank you so much for this opportunity to present our FY21 budget proposal. Greetings to Council President Moore and all members of Council. I hope you all are safe, and I hope you all are well, and I miss you all. I wanted to start off to let you know that I have with me today Deputy Solicitor Erica Smith and my budget manager, Sandra Thomas. If we could go to the first page, I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, next page. Our core mission, of course, as the solicitor for the City of Atlanta, is to represent the interests of all of our citizens in Atlanta in any matter that comes before the Atlanta Municipal Court, whether criminal or civil. We have to do that consistent with our responsibilities as prosecutors. We, of course, are responsible for any violation of law that comes before the court, whether it's an ordinance, a misdemeanor, or a felony that may need to be bound over to a higher court. We cannot at all carry out our mission without the wonderful leadership that we have in the City of Atlanta. I must just commend our wonderful and our brave mayor for her leadership. And I have to commend her team, Mr. Joshua Williams, Ms. Carmen Chubb, Charletta Wilson-Jack, and Mr. Matthew Bartlett, who has been very helpful in working with us and very attentive to us through this budget process. Our core functions deal with the general traffic, criminal, and code enforcement cases that come before our court. We have to deal with everything that touches the court calendar. We investigate, we screen, we initiate prosecution of criminal, quasi-criminal actions, and civil actions with the goal of public safety. We have to represent the city and the state and make sure that proceedings are done within the confines of all of the legal rules that should be followed. We are supported by a wonderful team that help us with screening. We handle record restriction, records management. We have a team of investigators, our own code enforcement officers that you all provided for us to review charges and determine that a prosecution is proper before the court. We have to observe all the constitutional rights of the defendant, so we have to charge the cases, and we have to do it in a very professional fashion. A few years ago, we were blessed to have the support of the administration and the council to launch community prosecution. It's a process that's been around for years, and we hope that we have made you proud with our community prosecution efforts. We collaborate with the law enforcement, all of our community leaders. We have many other public and private partners that help us with problem solving to improve public safety on the front end. These are things that are geared toward helping people not get in trouble and sustain criminal behavior in the first place. We also work very hard with our diversion and alternative prosecution program to provide people an opportunity to not have a conviction on their record. These programs can help us resolve our traffic cases, our code offenses, and even minor criminal violations in an efficient manner. We work to reduce the footprint in the court, and these programs are geared toward educating our public to observe the law and to respect the law. And we appreciate the partnership that we have received from everyone in that regard. Next slide, please. Our next slide basically depicts our FY adopted budget and, of course, our FY proposed budget. As you can see, the budget appropriation is flat. It's similar to where we are now, and we really appreciate the efforts and, quite frankly, the sacrifices that have to be made for us to continue to operate and to function in a way that benefits all of our citizens. We've been able in FY20 to successfully resolve over 90% of the cases that are brought before the Atlanta Municipal Court through our traditional and our non-traditional process with a sense of fairness and justice. Our code enforcement initiatives continue to expand. We are identifying and tackling blight. We tackle it from the front end to the back end. We participate in the coordinated quarterly city cleanups and tire abatements. You all are familiar with our Fight Against Blight programs and our educational symposiums to educate citizens. We have expanded to include the business community. The Ultimate Business Tune-Up Symposium was a wonderful success last year with everybody's help, and we're looking toward expanding it to a commercial property owner tune-up also as we continue to move forward in our city. So we're using the civil process, judicial and REM, working with condemnations and nuisance abatement to really make a difference in our city. We have been participating during COVID-19 in strategy meetings with code enforcement, with the Atlanta Police Department and other departments, and we have now identified approximately between 178 to 180 cases that are going to be ready for nuisance petitions as we get our court process started back up. And this is to address blight, but it is also to allow the city to enforce lien foreclosures so that we can get revenue in for these properties and to make sure that that revenue is used to help alleviate blight. Many of you, of course, have been very familiar with our pretrial programs. We continue to expand in the areas of case screening. We utilize plea negotiations. This fiscal year, we've been able to resolve more than 26,000 cases through our diversion and alternative prosecution programs. We have had tremendous assistance from AIM to help us to try to work through leveraging technology to improve those processes. And we want to continue to find ways to bring convenience to our citizens so they don't have to come down to court to resolve their cases. As you know, we've collaborated with our community prosecution with all city departments and many of our community groups. We've attended more than 150 NPU meetings, community group meetings, and we participated in more than 50 community outreach initiatives. And we appreciate each and every opportunity that you as council members have given us to be a part of your process. We also realize that with regard to our law enforcement community, we have a role in training. We work very hard to help the Atlanta Police Academy as the recruits come in and with in-service training to help with training hours. We provided more than 96 training hours thus far. So what do we look toward utilizing our FY21 budget proposal? As I mentioned, leveraging technology to try to efficiently resolve cases with the help of AIM and other partners to try to make sure that we screen and give people alternative opportunities. Continue and expand our code enforcement initiatives by tackling the blight and utilizing all the tools that you all have given us through legislation, the tools that already exist through state legislation to better our community. We're going to continue our collaboration with all of the other various city departments and community groups to keep making Atlanta the place to be. We want to continue to work with the police and other law enforcement officers to help with training. We have been working with APD in terms of reinstituting the DUI task force. We have been working with the Governor's Office of Highway Safety to work on reducing traffic fatalities. We look forward to working with Councilman Dickens and the Transportation Committee and Commissioner Rowan on the new project to reduce to zero the traffic fatalities that we have to deal with. So we're very excited about that. Let's go to the next slide, please. The next slide is what have we been doing and how have we been dealing with the impact of COVID-19? Well, we have retooled and redeployed personnel to participate and partner with other city departments in community outreach, participating in food distribution drives in areas with food insecurity, providing activity bags for our senior care facilities. One of the things that I did once we realized that we were under this pandemic is that I called Mr. Williams and I asked him, how can we help? I have investigators. I have code enforcement officers. I have attorneys. He put us in contact through the work of Jeffrey Norman with various city departments, and we were able to redeploy people to help, especially with the Mayor's Office of Constituent Services. We also have been provided opportunities by you as council members to come out and to join in and to help with your activities to keep our community safe, to care about our seniors, to make sure people have the basics in terms of food. And we really appreciate you giving us those opportunities and allowing us to participate. And we stand ready to continue to do so. We have also, as I mentioned before, worked in our strategy meetings with code enforcement, with zoning, with the law department and others to come up with our lien foreclosure process. We are committed to making your neighborhood safe, clean, and livable. And we stand ready to file these nuisance petitions. We have already vetted over 180 of them. and we're ready to go as soon as circumstances allow us to do so. We have participated from day one with all court hearings and will continue to do so. We support social distancing. We present cases daily on the in-custody calendar. We do this 6 days a week. The only exception is Saturdays. So we want to make sure that people are processed within 12 to 24 hours. In the background, while these hearings are going on, we have investigators and prosecutors that are involved each day in screening these cases, retrieving the records, preparing pretrial negotiations where appropriate. We still stand up cases for handling by pleas and abstention, and we still are carrying out our diversion functions. And we have many partners that are helping us with that. So it is extremely important for us as we move forward to leverage technology to allow defendants to resolve their cases and avoid convictions through our alternative sentencing program. AIM has helped us to expand our ability to put our record restrictions online for the most part. We are so grateful for the efforts of Councilmember Brown and many others to put record restriction on the forefront. We want to continue to push this issue to help people get back on their feet, especially in the employment climate that we're dealing with now. We are continuing to work with the Atlanta-Fulton County Pretrial Arrest Diversion Program, which is commonly known as PAD, to help low-level offenders find a way out of the criminal justice system. Because if they don't find a way out, they'll just keep recycling in and in again. We want to also make sure that we keep in mind our students. So we continue our outreach to all of our colleges and universities, Morehouse, Spelman, Morris Brown, Georgia Tech, Emory, Georgia State University. We want to engage them as soon as possible to help them to understand that we have to live together and make this a safer place for everyone. Next slide, please. With this next slide, I just want to take a moment as I conclude my comments to point out to you the people that are part of my team. Deputy Solicitor Rhonda Graham, that works with our criminal litigation with a particular focus on DUI. Erica Smith, who works diligently with code enforcement issues and our community outreach. Andrew Taylor, who works diligently with all of our general traffic citations and our criminal litigation. And the team that helped me to do what I need to do with day-to-day operations, Catherine Holden, our operations manager, Sandra Thomas, our business manager, and Ms. Jennifer Johnson, our manager of special programs. And there are many others in the office. So with that, I'd like to conclude my comments, and I am very open to what questions that you have for us. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carter, for a very informative presentation and for all that you and your team do. I am going to call first on Councilmember Andrea Boone. We might be having a technical issue. Can we get Councilmember Boone off of mute? Andrea Boone.
We got you now. Okay.
We can hear you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Solicitor Carter, and your entire team, Ms. Smith. First, thank you for your responsiveness, just not only to elected officials, but responding day to day to those citizens that need help. Recently, you all helped and advised us on a very big issue at Fairburn and Gordon apartments where 17.5 tons of trash were removed, came to our aid, and we just appreciate that. And also working with our faith-based community at the last minute, delivering scores of groceries to our seniors and delivering them to their doors, packing bags, and just always being there for the people of Atlanta. I just want to thank you all so much. And Ms. Smith, we really appreciate all of the dedicated work you've done on the Del Mar corridor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This is Erica Smith. Council members, thank you for that response. And we're happy to do whatever any council member needs.
Thank you so much, Ms. Smith. Thank you. And your entire team.
All right. Do I have, I think I do have Councilmember Joyce Shepard.
Hey. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
We can hear you, Ms. Shepard.
Okay. I just want to say thank you also, Mr. Carter, to you and your team, what y'all do every day. I work very closely with you all at the Code Enforcement Commission, Ms. Smith, and your whole team in terms of just code violations and a lot of other things you do for the city. So we appreciate you. I want to thank you for your help with my seniors during the COVID-19, and y'all came out and gave me some help and some distributions. I appreciate that. And as I said before to the other folks, if you need anything, please let me know as the public safety chair what your needs are. But I appreciate your support and all y'all do, your whole department. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I have put out the last call to council members. If anybody has a question or a comment to the office of the city solicitor, please speak up. All right. I think that is it. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Carter, Ms. Smith, Ms. Graham, and the rest of your team. You all do an exceptional job over in the Office of City Solicitor. So we appreciate a very thorough budget presentation, but we, more than that, appreciate all the good work that you do for the city of Atlanta. And I will say you have always been responsive when we have had a question from my office or needed help over there. So I do appreciate everybody's good work. Make the last call. Anybody else has a question or a comment? I wasn't sure if that was somebody, but I think that is it. So thank you for your afternoon. Again, apologies that we got a little off schedule and kept you a little bit over, but we had a lot of information to cover today. This is going to conclude today's budget hearings, and we will be back on tomorrow. Let me just tell everybody what our schedule is for tomorrow. We will start up again at 10 a.m. tomorrow, which is Thursday, June 4th, with the Department of City Planning from 10 to 11, the Department of Finance from 11 to 12. We'll take a break for lunch. We will have the Department of Enterprise Asset Management from 1 to 2, and we will finish the day with the Department of Customer Service, ATL 311, from 2 to 3 tomorrow. So thank you to everybody for your informative presentations this afternoon. Thank you to my colleagues for sticking through another long day and participating and making sure that we fully understand all these departmental budgets. And we will see everybody tomorrow at 10 a.m.